everyone, and good afternoon. For those of you who just caught that 4-minute video we just played, will understand why we at the CEO Action Network and Climate Governance Malaysia are doing what we are doing in organizing these roundtable discussions. We are running out of time to protect the planet and stay well below the 2-degree rise in temperature so that not only human beings will survive, but all life on this planet. This is a call for every individual to step up and act responsibly. My name is Kalanithi Nesaretnam, and I'm co-founder of Climate Governance Malaysia. I'm also on the steering committee of the CEO Action Network. Last year, we ran a number of roundtables, and the recommendations from these discussions were launched on Earth Day after engagement with the relevant government ministries. Last year, we didn't address the waste sector, but this is an important area, and we are running this in a 3-part series. Today, you will hear how corporations and consumers are managing their waste. On the 12th of July, we will address the idea of having smart cities and technological solutions to address waste management and how these can help resolve waste issues within the community. Our final session on the 19th of July will be a conversation with the government, how we can all work together to what is coined as the all of government and whole of society approach. Ladies and gentlemen, annually, the world generates 1.3 billion tons of solid waste. This is expected to go up to 2.2 billion by 2025. Businesses are thinking not only about how to reduce consumer waste, but also how to reduce, reuse, and recycle waste at their companies. This is partly driven by the rising price of raw materials and partly due to both consumers and companies becoming more aware of the need to protect our environment and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. 7%, ladies and gentlemen, of all greenhouse gases produced globally were due to preventable food waste. In 2021, Malaysia generated 38,000 tons of solid waste per day. Now, 10% of the garbage we throw out every day is food that can still be eaten. We dump 4,000 tons of edible food, enough to fill 1.5 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Malaysians must save their food, and by managing our food consumption, we will not just save the environment, but also our pockets. So today, ladies and gentlemen, we have lined up a distinguished panel of speakers who will share their experiences. We have Mr. Juan Aronols, the CEO of Nestle, Mr. Geoff, CEO of the Food Purveyor, Ms. Suzanne Mooney, founder of the Lost Food Project, Ms. Wong Yann, General Manager of Eco World Malaysia, and Dr. Umeswara, CEO of DIALOG ESECO. I'm sure you are waiting anxiously to hear from them. It is now my pleasure to introduce our distinguished moderator, Mr. Sivaprasad. Mr. Sivaprasad is Managing Director and Partner at Boston Consulting's Energy and Sustainability Practices. He obtained his bachelor's and master's degrees in chemical engineering from the University of Cambridge. At BCG, he focuses on energy transition, climate change, sustainability, and is the lead for Southeast Asia. Great credentials, Dave. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Sivaprasad. Dave, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kala. It's a real pleasure and privilege to be able to join this panel discussion with our distinguished guests. You've kindly introduced all of them, and I very much look forward to the discussion today. I would just like to compliment Dr. Kala and team for setting this up. It's a very important topic, and one that is important for Malaysia. It's also important globally as we transition, into a more sustainable world. And before we get into our discussion, I thought it would be helpful for us to reflect on some of the numbers that Dr. Kala had shared, and I want to complement with some of these global numbers as well, which really are quite staggering. Dr. Kala mentioned 1.3 billion tons of solid waste that is expected to grow to 2.2 by 2025. If you just unpack that a bit further and talk a bit about plastic waste and food waste, globally, this is really quite a staggering number and quite a massive problem. So just on plastic waste, for example, some estimates say that there's 9 billion tons of plastic that's been produced over the last 100 years, and 7 billion has become waste and is in the environment. The UN predicts that there'll be 12 billion tons of plastic waste that will be leaked into the environment by 2050. I mean, these are really staggering numbers. We will talk quite a bit about food waste today as well. And recently, BCG did a fairly extensive study on food waste and what one could do about it. And just to start, and I'll very much look forward to the experience and the insights from our esteemed panelists. There is an estimate of 1/3 of all global food that is produced that goes to waste. And just to put that into numbers, that's 1.6 billion tons of food and almost 1.2 trillion in terms of dollars when you put a value against it. And this is expected to increase over the next 10 years to over 2 billion tons of waste. That's 30%. So for almost every 10 apples, let's say, that is produced, 3.5 of them are lost in the supply chain, in waste, in consumers, and so on. So it's really such a massive problem. So with that, I'd very much like to introduce our first panelist, Juan Aronols, CEO of Nestle and regional head for Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei. He brings 30 years of experience with the Nestle group. And Juan, we look forward to hearing your perspective from your vantage point on the waste problem. Juan?
Thank you, Dave. It's a great pleasure to be here. And clearly we are talking about two subjects that are very at the heart of what Nestle is trying to tackle globally and also in Malaysia. Food waste and packaging waste in some way are extremely correlated, because packaging is also one way of extending food shelf life so that we can reduce waste. But clearly there is a big issue that has to do with behaviors. I think probably we are just used to have too much food available. And then there is the consequence. How can we preserve and protect food so that it can last longer, but do it in a way that does not create the problem that we are all facing with plastic waste, that is particularly visible in our part of the world. At our end, there are basically 3 actions that we are taking when it comes to packaging waste. The first one is obviously making better packaging. And we have embarked already for some years, and we have many great examples of better, more sustainable solutions. Maybe, and you will allow me to do a bit of show and tell. For instance, we were first to basically get rid of plastic straws. Malaysia was the first country to move in this direction for Nestle by adopting paper straw. But now globally, basically, we have exited plastic straws, and you have paper from sustainably controlled origins that it's a much lesser problem in terms of impact on the environment. But the journey continues. You can see that, for instance, these packs are wrapped in a plastic wrap. We can also move to solutions that use cardboard, again, from controlled sustainable sources. And there you have a different dimension of the problem. That's something that we are doing. The problem of littering packaging has to do also of much of this waste not having a commercial use, or for people not having an incentive to recover. So a big area of work that we are adopting is starting to also reduce the use of virgin plastic and start using materials made with recycled PET in this case, or recycled polypropylenes, no recycled PP. If we can create markets that create value out of waste, we are also creating incentives to avoid littering, or if there is littering, start creating incentives for people, for entrepreneurs to kind of collect it. So that's clearly one big area for us, how we can make packaging better. The second area is to support collection, segregation, and circularity. And I can share with you, and we can talk in detail, we have some pilot programs that are not pilot anymore, because we will be reaching 100,000 households across Selangor. We are operating in 4 cities where we collaborate with the municipality and with KPT Recycling to basically organize collection and separation in a regular basis, so that we can create the stream of plastic post-consumer that can be used then for recycling. And then it's also about engaging with consumers. We need to educate consumers on how to separate and collect effectively the packaging they use for recycling. And of course, you know, there is also all the work that we need to do with different stakeholders, finding like-minded people that wants to do the same and scale up all these efforts to have more impact. And we can discuss later more in detail any of these dimensions. So back to you, Dave.
Thank you, Juan. And I understand that you have also a video that you'd like to share with the audience.
Oh yeah, please go ahead.
As the world's largest food and beverage manufacturer and the largest FMCG company in Malaysia, we have made a global pledge to ensure that by 2025, 100% of our packaging is recyclable or reusable, while we cut the use of virgin plastic by at least 1/3. We are scaling up our war against plastic waste, ramping up our efforts by working with like-minded stakeholders, forging partnerships with policymakers, NGOs, and the public in general to accelerate positive change. Our initiatives have laid a strong foundation to materialize our vision that none of our packaging ends up in litter or into the environment. Our mindset is about creating shared value, doing good as a business while doing also good for the society where we operate. We share an inspiring goal to solve the challenge of plastic pollution and to achieve plastic circularity. We will continue to explore all partnerships that help us to build together a more sustainable future for everyone, today and for the generations to come.
Thank you, Juan. It's certainly a very high impact and ambitious program that Nestle is implementing, and we very much look forward to hearing a bit more about how you're going about doing this, how you're working differently to make it happen. Maybe to move on to some of our other panelists, and we'll circle back. And Geoff King is the CEO of the Food Purveyor. And the Food Purveyor is a leading premium supermarket retailer in Malaysia, and has set ambitious targets on reduction of single-use plastics and to be plastic-free by 2023. So Geoff, would be good to hear a bit of how you've come to this ambition, and what was some of the thinking that you and your team went through to set these targets.
Yeah, hi Dave, and thanks for inviting us to this panel session. It's an honor to be here. And you know, listening to Juan's presentation, it's great to see that one of our key manufacturers and the community of manufacturers are really getting behind this plastic problem. How it all began for us was back in 2019. I had an away day or an away strategy session with my team. And it was the time that Greta Thunberg was making her biggest voice on the world stage. We had stories of waste mountains, plastic mountains in Hong Kong and in Malaysia. And Malaysia was recognized as one of the worst single-use plastic consuming nations in the world. And really against that backdrop, we also had our customers raising concerns about the amount of single-use plastic they could see in our stores. We protected our produce diligently, and plastic is a very good protector of food. And so we were wrapping almost every single piece of fresh produce, vegetables and fruit, to protect their shelf life and to ensure freshness for that consumer to take it away and preserve its life in their homes. So we acknowledged that feedback and that pressure voice, and really we got together and formulated our plan, which was to rid ourselves of all the plastic, single-use plastic that we introduce in our business by the end of 2023. And the reason we chose 2023 was, you know, we could hear governments making 2050 pledges or 2030, we'll be doing this and that. And it felt too far away for us, that we wanted something tangible, something that would motivate us to get going and overcome some inertia and some fear, and to really push ahead with pushing the boundaries of what we're doing. So 2023 is the date we chose. It happened to rhyme with with plastic free. So it became quite a catchy title and really mobilized and motivated my team to get out and do some things that we wouldn't have otherwise dared to do. First of all, we analyzed in our store, where are the key single-use plastic areas where we introduce. And if you look at fruit and veg, like I said before, we were wrapping everything in cling film to protect it. We also gave customers free plastic weigh bags to take that produce and get it weighed and out the door. In our meat and poultry area, we were putting everything in plastic trays and then shrink wrapping that and then putting that in plastic bags and giving it to the customer. In our bakery section, every single bun was being put into a plastic bag for customers. All our cups and our stirrers were all plastic for our cafes. And then lastly, our carrier bags that customers took the product away to their homes was also single-use plastic. So we tackled each of those four areas in turn, and I can say today we're over halfway through our program, and we've reduced almost immediately half the weight, half the plastic in our fruit and vegetable area. We've stripped back a lot of our product. A lot of our product is now displayed bare or naked. We've had to develop some special trays to keep those products hydrated, as some product really doesn't like the aircon environments of our stores. So we have to keep them hydrated and preserved as long, and we have to rotate them during the day. So there's a bit of extra due care there. We have trialed mesh bags for customers to take their product, get it weighed and get it bagged, and take that mesh bag home and then bring it back on the next trip. So we're making some progress with eliminating the weigh bags there. We are in the process of replacing our plastic trays with paper trays. Some of them don't freeze too well, and that's a problem. But otherwise, you know, we've got trials going on with paper trays, and we're also trialing single-use or repeatable use bags that customers can bring and buy their meat, and Ziploc it up, take it home, put it in their fridge or freezer, and then wash it and bring it back to the store. So that is in the process there. But in bakery, we've eliminated all plastic from our rolls and our cakes. It's just the sort of loaves of bread and the sliced loaves and a few of the bagels that remain in plastic bags. And we're trying to find alternatives that don't dry out those products as fast as they would in a non-plastic environment. So we're still exploring that. But the biggest win we've made is switching off single-use carrier bags in all our stores but one. The OTK store still remain to be converted, but in all our main brands, we've persuaded our customers and worked with our customers to change their behaviours and start to bring back reusable bags in advance of their trip, so that they can take that product home without adding to the plastic problem within our society. That took about 18 months of working with our customers, persuading them, rewarding the customers with extra bites points and cash contributions when they were doing the right thing, and then eventually penalising customers by taking the bags away at the checkout and forcing them to adopt new behaviours. It took about 18 months, and really taught us a lot about, you know, overcoming the inertia of a culture, of a habit and a culture that's set in. So now we've actually eradicated 27 million pieces of single-use plastic out of the system, going into the system every single year, and that remains a permanent change. We're like I say, we're over halfway through. We sometimes look at ourselves and we look around at our peers and see, are they following us? Are they making the same jumps? And we can see that Lotus business has made the jump on single-use plastic bags as well. But we're really proud. We've made this change without government regulation, without a big, regulatory push or a penalty system to make us make this change. We volunteered it. We listened to customer voices and made this brave step. And very satisfied with the level of progress made so far, but also recognise there's a long way to go even from now to hit our targets at the end of 2023. I can't hear you, Dave, sorry.
Sorry. Thank you, Geoff. Certainly an inspiring story, and one that is great to see how you've accelerated. 2023 is next year, and you'll be having zero plastics in a year's time. This is really fantastic. We'd love to hear, as we get into the discussion, some of the challenges you faced in shaping behaviors, because a lot of what you described also boils down to how consumers act and what they buy and how they buy and so on. So very much look forward to that. We'd love to now introduce Wong Sheue from EcoWorld Development Group. Sheue is Divisional General Manager for Group Corporate Services. She oversees sustainability, investor relations, corporate services, and really, Sheue, it would be great to get your view on how you as a developer and working with communities are addressing the waste management problem. Sheue?
Thank you. Just let me share my screen, yeah? Okay. Just hold on a minute. I'm trying to get it to slideshow. Thank you, Dave, for that. Okay. When we look at waste, we recognize that as a developer, certainly, there is a lot of waste that comes from our business and also in the communities that we build. So we generally have, we adopt this, which I think is something that is generically out there, and most of us know. The first thing about waste is we want to try to prevent, minimize. Whatever we cannot, we try to reuse and recycle. Even in terms of recycling, as much as possible, not to go for more natural recycling and reuse instead of energy recovery. And by doing all this, then hopefully we will minimize what needs to go to the landfills and actually gets disposed, right? So this particular slide shows a little bit about, what we do on the construction side of things, right? Three things. One is, to reduce the consumption of materials. And, an interesting thing is because of late also construction materials have been rising in price, right? So the increase in price also, in some ways has helped incentivize, everyone in the chain to make sure that there's no waste. So what we did was that we took the opportunity of the price increase to actually speak to our contractors and say that, look, in their interest and in ours, we're going to increase the frequency of site audits and inspections. By doing that, we hope to reduce errors that may happen during construction, and this minimizes waste because you don't have to tear down anything, you don't have to redo something, and in a normal situation, where people may be a bit more resistant without the cost increase, this has actually helped us. So that has been one fairly recent, additional incentive that we put in. Another thing that we did was that a while ago, we introduced a design to own initiative where it is not at all efficient from a mass housing developer to get feedback from people and give them a chance to choose the kind of layouts that they like, how they may want to adapt. But we decided that we wanted to do that because we wanted to encourage customers to come out, and tell us what they want in terms of their layout, so that we design our layouts in a more pragmatic manner that fits current lifestyles. And by doing that, later on, we introduced multiple layouts for the various houses that we're launching. So with the choices that they have from the outset, we hope to reduce renovation waste. Another thing also is that the feedback that we compile, sometimes when the visitors actually come to our showroom, because we have digitalized a lot of our operations, and this feedback is then fed into the design and construction process that enables us to also help reduce renovation waste. Finally, all our townships are actually strata titled townships. So even our landed properties, and strata titled properties actually have far more, I suppose, restrictions into the type of renovation that people buying those properties can do, and that we feel also helps minimize the waste a bit. And whatever best practices that one team may have, we share it across. And because we are quite digitalized now in terms of our operations, these things can migrate from let's say a township in Johor to Penang to and the Klang Valley, right? The other thing is that we have a team that looks to select building materials that can be reused or recycled, but of course, bearing in mind that a lot of these, building materials must be tried and tested, because we are building something that we, hope will last for generations, and that is not something that we want to trial too much until we are confident that the materials can be used well. But some of the other more practical things is that the timber formwork that we can use, we can actually reuse that, for our landscaping work. Sometimes also, to whatever extent that it's pragmatically possible, we also use aluminum formwork, which can be reused very often. In terms of the concrete waste, and sometimes areas that you may have to blast, this can be used to build temporary access roads on site. And also, along the way, as you undertake the construction, where we find that there are big blast rocks, right? These ones are also diverted to be used as landscaping materials at the parks and waterways. By doing this, we hope to really reduce the amount of waste that gets put into landfills. The other thing about construction waste is that the parts that we are unable to reuse and recycle, we segregate it by types into recyclables, and we encourage our contractors to actively recycle as much construction waste as possible. Happily, in some ways, because prices have gone up for certain things like scrap metal, they are now also very incentivized to undertake this practice. On the other part, for construction, the thing that also matters is to make sure that the waste that is generated in terms of silt doesn't end up in waterways and pollute waterways. To do that, what we do is that we actually install and regularly maintain the silt fence and traps on our construction sites. And we build a lot of temporary sediment capture ponds with pre-designed depths that enable the construction silt to fall to the bottom, so that what is actually discharged out into the drain will be cleaner water. Detention ponds are also built as lakes and parks in our various parks. We are quite well known for the kind of landscaping that EcoWorld property has, and you normally see a lot of waterways and parks. Apart from the aesthetic beauty of these, things that we built, right? It helps to control flooding. It reduces runoff. And we use all this water that is in our detention pond to maintain our parks and greenery. And actually at Eco Horizon, we even collaborated with Underwater Consortium to use the bioeffluent water, for our landscape maintenance. That has enabled us to conserve, a fairly substantial amount of potable water that would otherwise have been, required to maintain our landscape. So I think over a course of 3 years, we managed to save about 180,000 meter cube of water. Right. Of course, the other thing that we do quite often, we recognize that a lot of waste, that is generated is sometimes also due to a mindset and cultural problem. So as much as possible internally, we have a Green Council and we have our Green Champions that will regularly share with their colleagues, on what are their practices on waste segregation, textile recycling, anything that they find to be of interest. This is something that is actively done to help cultivate and instill sustainable habits. Digitalization is a big thing, as I mentioned before, because it helps us to go paperless and other things in terms of reducing water and waste. We also adapted what we found from some of the zero waste NGOs, and we created our own internal green office guides to encourage our colleagues to practice zero waste, or as much as possible minimize the amount of waste in the office. What was quite interesting, in order to kickstart this thing, right, was that our CEO, who is our president of our sustainability committee, right, he basically ordered one round, all waste paper baskets at individual desks get taken away. So we came to work one day and we found that there were no waste paper baskets around, and everyone had to control the amount of waste and just dispose of it in a central location within the office, right? Other things, the office recycling, we managed to recycle a fair amount of waste over the last 2 years. Of course, last year was a bit lower because of all the MCO lockdowns, and also I think partly because we had managed to get people to, we had moved further ahead in terms of our digitalization, so there was actually a lot less paper that was wasted. Right. On the community end, because we build townships, we provide recycling bins within all the communal precincts and also in the main commercial precincts that is at a high traffic area, so that people are able to recycle. One of our townships also has a very interesting thing where we built our food and beverage and retail outlets out of recyclable containers. That's at Eco Ardens. If you are ever in the City Alam area, you can visit and see. They're actually very beautiful, and they're very they have become a very IG friendly spot, and a lot of people like to go there and take pictures. But these are all built out of recycled containers, right? Of course, partnership is a very important thing to us. We used to partner with, and we still do actually, with Yellow Bin and CRC to organize the recycling within our townships. But we're very happy that through this platform and through the Dr. Kala's initiative, we got to meet ESECO. And we are in talks with Dr. Sri, whom we will hear from later, to hopefully be able to work together with ESECO to, undertake recycling within our townships at Eco. Okay. Then, in terms of basically instilling the habit, what we have done is we actually organize various different engagement events with the community and with our residents. This was something that we did at BBCC recently, where we had an upcycling event, that we engage also with single mothers to help them to in a way, make a living out of waste that other people are throwing out. I totally relate to what Juan was saying, that in order to encourage people to do it, we really need to start to create a market that attributes value to waste, right? And in terms of community habits and culture, what we did this year is, instead of just celebrating World Environment Day, we launched our own World Environment Month. It's really not a very big deal thing. It is essentially something that we wanted to do throughout the whole month of June to encourage our team to create events for the community that will promote sustainable living habits, including sustainable habits in terms of waste management, right? So that's essentially the few things that we are doing, and I'm very happy to say that within EcoWorld, we have a lot of young people who are extremely passionate about the sustainable living, so that helps us to push this agenda within the group. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. It's only a very comprehensive set of actions across the entire business that you're driving, and what is notable is how many of the things are also related to making it relevant for individuals on how they act and behave and what they do, and which is really something that we'd love to learn more about. Would love to now introduce Suzanne Mooney. Suzanne is the founder of the Lost Food Project, Suzanne has had many years of experience working in the BBC and working across multiple continents in a diverse career. Suzanne, would love your views on what you're doing, addressing that massive problem of 30% of all food produced goes to waste, and how you're dealing with that. Suzanne, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, take two. Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me today. It's a real pleasure to be with the esteemed panelists and hopefully highlight some of the issues for everybody that everyone's trying to tackle here. I think there's for me, a very simple narrative, which I think we're about to show a short video that kind of explains everything very simply, because it is a very simple, we have an issue and it needs resolving, and we need to create value chains for this to happen. But yeah, the video coming up, I think, explains what we do.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Yeah, so yeah. Yeah, so basically what the Lost Food Project does is we collect surplus food, lost food from different partners, including Nestle and Food Purveyor and other kind of more, I guess, pioneering organizations who have realized that, waste is a significant problem. And we basically collect it and we redistribute it to people in need. And obviously we are there's a humanitarian side to what we do, but there's a big part of what we do is for the environment and sustainability. So I'm going to show some slides just very quickly, not to, oops. I think, can you see my slides?
No, they're not up yet. Suzanne.
Cannot. Okay. Okay. I've just had a new computer, so maybe someone could put up if Kala or Audrey could put up my slides, because I'm pressing screen
no worries,
share.
Suzanne. Saras will share it with you now.
Sure. I'm not quite sure. Normally it works fine. Yeah, so basically the Lost Food Project has been going since, I guess, 2015, 2016. And since we've started, we've given around about just under 11 million meals, plus we've given many millions of non-food essentials, because we're trying to, as I say, reduce all the CO2 emissions that we can, and as well as helping people. And it's extremely interesting when you discover start scratching away at the statistics of the impact of food waste. If you look at the food supply chain in general, over a third of all greenhouse gas emissions are caused by food. And when you think that between 30 and 40% of all food is disposed of without being fed, without being eaten. So I can't actually see any slides up. Is it just
sorry, Suzanne, I think she's still trying to open it. Hang on, just 2 seconds.
No problem. It's I'm having the same. I'm not sure why, because it was working last night. But But yeah, I mean, it's about creating, I think, a value chain, because, you know, until recently, lost food was not seen as, there we go. Lost food was not seen as anything that was worth anything. It was just not really on any of our radars. So if we go on to the next slide. Yeah. Actually, I think this is an old slide version, but anyway. Yeah, so basically we're feeding over 10,000 families, and this is every week. So it's obviously it's a significant amount of food, although we take less than 1% of food that is disposed of in Malaysia. And if we carry on with the slideshow, our impact, as I say, so far is 3.2 million kilograms of food. I think it's about 10.6 million meals have been provided, and over 8.1 kilograms of CO2 has been prevented from harming the atmosphere. Although these figures, this 8.1 kilograms of CO2 is much lower than the real value. And we're actually in the process of creating a carbon calculator, which I'll talk about a bit later on, that's very, very bespoke and specific. And if you go on to the next slide. So the reasons for lost food is there's many reasons for lost food. It goes all the way along the value chain. It starts off in the farm. There's lots of different reasons. Ugly vegetables. Everyone's heard of ugly vegetables these days. It's a bit of a trendy word. There's so many misshapen, wrong size, slightly bobbled, maybe a bit of a dink on one side that's simply just thrown away and not used. At factory level, there's issues where a few are taken and the whole box is just simply thrown away. There's often issues in transportation and obviously in storage. If a large box gets a bit damaged, then often everything inside is simply thrown away, because again, it's about creating, I think, the value, and until now the logistics have meant that these items don't have the value that, you know, maybe we perceive them to have. Labeling can be an issue. Oversupply, which is predicting human behavior, which is obviously always very difficult. Orders being cancelled, promotional packaging for Christmas, Hari Raya, free for the price of two, all of those, you know, it's to do with customer behavior. So we can't simply blame the companies, because we're all part of the system, and the system has been created because of the customer behavior, as well as, you know, the manufacturing or the farm level. And the expiry date, which is, I think, extremely interesting, because obviously there's expiry, there's best before, there's, you know, manufacturing recommendations, which are different from scientific recommendations. And I think this, for me, this is a key area that needs to be explored in the coming, you know, months and years, because even in certain countries, like I'm in Switzerland at the moment, and you're actually legally allowed to sell food that's past the best before date, which is extremely interesting, as, you know, vis-a-vis Italy is the same. So there's not really a fluid, joined up approach to food health and food safety. But of course, you know, it's really important to have, you know, rules and regulations to protect the customers as well. So that is a bit of a, you know, a compromise, really. And the next slide. Sorry, it's very difficult to, yeah, this is just a quick snapshot of where we're working. We're working across, you know, Peninsular Malaysia. We are also having some projects over in Borneo and Sabah. And we're hoping over time that we can just, you know, obviously expand, because there's food waste across the country, like every other country in the world. And the next slide. So this gives you an idea of the amount of charities and people that we're helping, and it's obviously growing because the need grows, particularly during COVID. We've actually started the Lost Food Project in Switzerland, and it's kind of the opposite problem. We have so much food, and it's actually easier to procure, but there's less people to give to. So it's it's very easy for the Lost Food Project to give out food, but we're very, very careful who we give to. We don't just give to anyone. We make sure they're ordered groups. We have liaisons with each charity to make sure that they're not, because we would just be another part of the problem if our charities are not using the food properly. So we make sure all our charities understand about recycling. They have to recycle all the packaging, and if anything isn't being eaten, we need to make sure, so we can adjust our measurements, so how much we give people in forthcoming deliveries. And the next slide. We, since day one, as I say, we have always called ourselves a sustainability food bank, and we're very closely aligned with the UN SDC, the United Nations Sustainability Development Cooperative. We obviously, hunger is a very key part of what we're working on, but we're also looking at trying to build up from the bottom, because it's an opportunity to make society fairer, actually, by reducing the burden of poverty, by helping people to have good quality food. And 60 to 70% of most of the food we're collecting is fruit and vegetables. It's fresh, it's it's really healthy, good food that people cannot afford to eat. So we're I think we're hitting a lot of those targets. We're doing a lot of advocacy work, trying to tell people about responsible consumption and production, and getting communities to work together. And obviously, we're nothing without our partners, so we're super grateful to people that are working with us, both in terms of food donations, but also in terms of support, because, as I say, what we're working is not really properly valued. So we don't receive money from governments, we don't receive money from, we receive small amounts from some corporates, and we receive small amounts from the public, but we have to fight for every cent we get. So it's as I say, for me, it's creating value in sort of recycling this last bit of the supply chains. And if, sorry, the next slide. Again, talking about, we really always want to highlight our partners, because without our partners, we cannot operate. And, particularly the Bites program by Food Purveyor has been really super amazing for us. I have to say, Sime Darby have also been great. And, Nestle have been phenomenal in the amount of, food that they've been given us. But this is that we're only getting a tiny portion of what's out there. So we want to create ways and channels so that more of the food that's currently sort of causing problems with the planet and can be given to people who are in positions of real poverty. So the next slide, please. So, I think one of the key takeaways for everybody these days is about circularity. It's about creating value change and making sure that it's a bit like energy. It always changes, it doesn't disappear. So if we don't use it for good, it becomes a problem. It becomes not just CO2, it becomes methane, which is like between 20 and 80 times more potent than CO2. And there's so much that can be done that isn't being done. And this is obviously the part that we're advocating for. If you, the next slide, please. So this is, I think, for me, probably later on in the discussion, the parts that we would like to be sort of talking about. It's, how we can improve, how we can get better both as an NGO, but also as a society, and what we need to do to push in that direction. So for us, technology and efficiencies make us more scalable and better. So we've linked up with Salesforce. We're going to implement a warehouse management system to allow us to work in other places in Malaysia, and to work, as I say, more efficiently. We have started in Switzerland as well, which is extremely interesting for different adversarial reasons. There's not as much demand, and yet there is more than you would think. Even a very rich country like Switzerland had a recent report that shows that 15% of people were living in poverty. This was a report by the University of Geneva. So there's poverty all over the world, even in the richest countries. It's just hidden a lot of the time. In Malaysia, we're moving into a new warehouse. We've actually just identified, I think, fingers crossed, the warehouse that we will be moving into, which will be, I think, in PJ, near Nestle. And this will be, really important for us, because it means that you can accept more food. We can have a lot more CSR activities of big companies coming in and allowing more volunteers and more interactions. The food calculator, I'm hoping, will be also a very interesting innovation. It's at the moment the calculations we use are from the FAO, the Food Aid Organization part of the United Nations, who are based in Rome. And there's very kind of rough estimates of how much CO2 is generated from the food that we're throwing away. But we know the figure is very much higher than is being currently used. So we've teamed up, we've signed a contract with the Food Policy Centre at City University, which is University of London. And one of their key scientists is one of our advisors, Dr. Christian Reynolds. And we are making very, tight, bespoke calculations basically of individual food items, so it can be used with credibility and integrity, and hopefully that these figures can be used by our donors if they have to do, particularly in the future as there's more and more of a spotlight on sustainability, how much is being saved. Because it was interesting, you're talking about plastic waste. Like plastic waste, I think, has roughly, I think it's 1.5 to 2.75 kilograms of CO2 emission basis, whereas food is an awful lot higher. And if you look at water that's generated along the supply chain, I mean, 70% of all water, fresh water, is used for agriculture. And the amount of water that food waste, particularly food and food waste, is sort of, just using, if you look at a shower, if we have a 5-minute shower, I think an average standard shower, we use about 11 or 12 litres of water in that 5-minute shower. Whereas if you look at a kilogram of beef, to generate 1 kilogram of beef, you're talking about 15,000 litres, not 11 or 12,000. Sorry, not 11 or 12 litres, but 15,000 litres. So it's all about scalability and understanding the statistics, and them not just being numbers, but being relevant and being important. And I think we have to create value, and we have to help companies push in the right direction, because some shareholders really are not interested. And there's a company like Danone, is a very sort of well-known company, and they were really pushing in the right direction, I think, in terms of their sustainability actions. And but sadly, the board, it was it's not the board were brilliant, actually. It was the stakeholders, the shareholders, who decided they wanted to have more of a profit and less about sustainability. So this, I think, is when policy comes in and when governments can make a difference too. And I think that we really have to support companies push in the right direction, because as Bill Clinton's strategist said, it's about the economy, stupid. And I think, whether it be an NGO or a company, we all need money to survive. And, as a CEO or as a, leader of a company, you need to have profits too to stay in your position. So I think one of the things that we're doing both in Switzerland and in Malaysia is speaking to governments about providing tax deductibles for food donors to make it part of their value chain, because it costs money for companies to be sustainable. So it's very easy for the public to criticize companies, and sometimes there is validity in that, I understand. But if we want to be smart, and if we want to create the right environment, we want the right impact, we have to work out how we get there. So for us, pushing for tax deductibles with the policymakers is a really key part of what we're doing. So yeah, I think that's mainly the Lost Food Project. There is a video I think that might be shown at the end that explains a bit more about our day-to-day operations as well.
Thanks a lot, Suzanne. You covered a broad range of themes that are critical to address the problem, from the supply chain to consumer behavior to how you work differently with partners, and creating awareness. It was quite notable, the comparisons that you made on emissions, and it certainly sheds the focus on how agriculture, land use, and food production plays such a critical role in achieving our global climate goals, and certainly something that sometimes gets lost in the overall narrative. Would love to pick up later also on the policy and the market environment and what you're doing there to shape some of this. It'll be very, very interesting for the audience and many of those involved in this space. Thanks, Suzanne. Would love to just round us off with Dr. Sri, who is the CEO of DIALOG ESECO, and he is a leading expert on circular economy, waste, and environmental management. He's also the Malaysian delegate and subject matter expert to the UN Environment Programme. Dr. Sri, we'd love to hear a bit of what you're doing and some of the programs that you're driving.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Hope you can hear me. Now, thank you very much, Mr. Dave, and to the rest of the esteemed panelist members. So I would like to straight away share my screen to share on what and how we are into this. Okay, now all of us, we know that we have an issue and we are circular economy enablers, and be part of our service is also to do recovery and recycling. Now, all of us, we know that there's an issue when it comes to not the formal waste companies or waste concessionaires. We also have the other collectors and so on. So even when there's a waste concessionaires and so forth, there are some of them, or majority of them, I would say, that they are working on silos. When your recyclables are being collected, we do not know what actually happens to it, how much is being collected, and how it gets recycled and so forth until it goes to the off-takers, or whether it's being dumped, or whether it gets recycled and recycled into what and so forth. So we do not have any accountability towards that. So what we do is through our system and through our practices, we connect the entire supply chain from the brand owners, from the type of products, from the manufacturers, retailers, and the consumers. And upon collection, whether it goes for the direct remanufacturing or whether it becomes a raw material for any other industries as a secondary raw material, and how we can improvise in this so that we can reduce waste ending up in the landfill or polluting the environment. So we provide traceability and transparency over here as well. Now, currently, these are the areas, or these are the total consumption that we have been serving, and in past after May 2022, we are expanding, in the process of expanding now. Now, we have a waste composition, and many of them have a waste composition, and we need to have accurate data in terms of the waste composition. And why we need to have accurate data? Only when we have a good data, we will also be able to know where are the gaps and how to actually fix the gaps, and also to have a proper management and policies, etc. So from this, some of them, or some of the municipalities, or even the government sectors, or even anyone would have this kind of waste composition, overall composition. But over here, I would also like to stress that through our system, when we calculate based on all this composition of waste being collected, we also have the calculation for the greenhouse gas emitted that is prevented from all these recyclables that is being collected as well. So when we are talking about low carbon city, we are talking about sustainability and so on. What is the accountability of calculation that is actually being measured when it comes to the GHG emission? So when we stream it down, like for an example from just now, which I showed these plastics, which is 50%, and when I narrow it down to the 50% of plastics, these are the detailed composition, and we can even narrow it down further to go into like PET. We also can narrow it down to PVT beverage bottles, PVT cosmetics, food beverage packaging, etc. So we can even go down deeper into that, and like demographic data or even brand audits and many more other details. So from here, we will also be able to track and trace what these products, who recycles it into which kind of segments. So we have the full closed loop system so that we will be able to do the traceability and transparency. And that is where we will be able to manage it well. So this is an example for plastics, and we can also go for any other type of waste that is being collected. So for an example that when we do the collection, we also have systematic collection or specialized collection. Like for example, we do it for Department of Agriculture. These are the contaminated or used pesticide containers and so on. We work with the brands and also the association related to this industry, where it is being taken into accountability, is being collected, and then it goes into the recycling process, and upon recycled, it goes converted into this kind of useful products. The other example is Body Shop, and most of you would have seen or would have heard about Body Shop, and they have a campaign in their retail outlet itself that to collect back their own products and so forth. But then, since this is a PET and it is related to cosmetic PET, which in Malaysia we do not have much recycling technology that can actually recycle this commonly, that is being recycled and so on. But then when we engage with them, we found a recycler that can actually recycle into PET strapping belt for logistics and so on. So this is how we engage back with the brand owners, the producers, and also right until the end when it gets recycled and how it goes back into the products again. So when we are talking about the barriers that we have faced in scaling up the collection or the recyclables collection, so we have like policy constraints as well, because some PBTs agencies or certain states have different type of regulations. Then so it is not standardized. Then we also have like lack of effective community engagement, because in rural, suburban, and urban is totally different ballgame. So we have a different kind of programs for different areas. Then we also have issues when it comes to unequal sharing of cost and benefit of recycling. And of course, many of them in the industry would agree with me that there are certain products that have a higher value. There are certain products that does not have a value, but it is still recyclable and so on. So then it is unavailability of advanced recycling technology. This is where we will inform back, or we get back to the recyclers, the producers, or even the manufacturers, that what is the need for change in the product design, where how can they go for more friendlier or recycling, recycling based products, and how can they also include recycled content into their products as well. And we also have like disruption of waste smugglers. These are sometimes informal sectors or illegal waste collectors, where when we have the segregation done, the collectors, the consumers have done the segregation and so on, they will just go in and smuggle the recyclables and so on. Apart from that, we also have like convenience related barriers. These are more towards like high-rise residential, especially like in PPR residential area, where they have constraint with space. At the same time, they have is like inconvenience for them to bring it all the way down and look for a space to put it out there and so forth. So these are convenience related. So that comes back to the mindset and behavioral barrier as well. I would like to also point out this particularly where cash for trash. Now, cash for trash or even trash for cash, this is giving a mindset to the public currently that they will only collect, or even the collector, also the consumer, whoever is collecting or doing the segregation, where they only try to give importance to the trash that have a cash value. So what will happen is only the items or the materials that have a weight and have a value in the market will get recycled easily or will be collected easily. And the other packaging and other type of trash that does not have a value at the present moment, but it has a recycling, it can be recycled, but it is not getting collected because the people's mindset is more towards when I dispose this cash or when I collect this thing, I only get so much. All right, so that is the mindset that actually reducing this practice of recycling as well. Now the other part is it is also leading towards the importance of the importance is more towards the cash rather than the importance should be more towards the environment or the benefit of the environment. And of course, segregation at source, right? So the other thing that the actions needed, okay, the actions needed is, I would say that the consumers do have the awareness on recycling. Many of them are nowadays, even the school children, parents, everyone have the awareness on the recycling, on the 3 R's. But I think they need to have more awareness on the myths and misconception on recycling, because they still do not know, because we still receive a lot of inquiries that, okay, when you say plastic is recyclable, okay, which type of plastic is recyclable? So now we also know that, okay, then we have a different category or different type. So why is the collector collecting this and why he's not collecting this? So they are being choosy. And what kind of, the misconceptions that what happens when it gets collected or recycled, how much is getting recycled into what and so on. So they have these myths and misconceptions. So is everyone's responsibility in order to clear this and provide these myths and awareness on the myths and misconceptions that they're having. Again, the trash for cash leads to increase on of non-valuable recyclables or waste, which is polluting the environment. Because if you take it, for example, like packaging, when you do not have a value for it, so they will just litter it or they will just dispose it, and lots of packaging is ending up in the landfill or even in the drainage and so on. And another clear example is glass, right? So glass, yes, it is reusable and so on, but when glass is increasing, we do not have enough or no glass recyclers at all in Malaysia now. So the glass is actually piling up in the landfill. All right, and again, more importance to the environment. The mindset has to be more importance to the environment. That should be the priority compared to whether it is cash, whether it's something else. All right, so we need to get into that. Now, the private sector is, of course, the entire supply chain. Great job or great thing that is being done by people like or companies like Nestle, Maria, the Malaysian Recycling Alliance, and etc. And all the MNCs are already taking the voluntary step towards the EPR. But we need more awareness on the EPR. And the 3R awareness is not just for the civil society, but also the private sector, especially the local brands. All right. So they still need the awareness on the EPR and the 3Rs. Implementation on CSV, creating shared value. Many of them, I would say that many of the private sector are still not aware of this CSV, especially the SMEs or the locals. All right. So they need to have more awareness on this and implement the creating shared value. Again, importance to the environment. This is not just for the consumers or the civil society, but even some of the private sectors used to ask us that, how much can you give us back in return? So their mindset is only that, how much can I gain from this? Yes, you will be able to gain in the longer run, but in a different form of, not just dollar and cents. And also, the other thing is transition towards circular economy. So the government is, of course, having some roadmaps towards circular economy. So I think the brands or the private sectors and everyone in the supply chain should take initiative towards this and be more proactive towards the transition of circular economy. And finally, coming to the private sector, segregation at source has been there, and we have not seen any enforcement. All right, we have not seen any enforcement of the segregation at source. We have not seen anyone got a ticket for or got a summon for not practicing segregation at source. All right, so I think the enforcement part have to be there as well, so that we can implement SAS, in a more efficient way, and policies to support waste aggregators. Okay, this one have to be carrot and stick on both ways, not just recyclers, but also the waste aggregators. All right, so that we can reduce the issues like waste smuggling and all the other stuff. And more holistic or circular policies that supports in all angles, all right, and not just focusing on narrowing it down to one single problem, because when that becomes a bottleneck later on, in order to support all the other issues and so forth. So we have lots of policies that coming into a bottleneck as well. And finally, the waste accountability should be a part of the sustainability report as well, because as you know that sustainability report, of course, focus on many angles or many aspects or many elements, but waste accountability should also be there. This is what I see that is quite important, or actions needed. Apart from that, there are a lot more other pain points in terms of budget, in terms of service providers are limited, taxpayers, and at many areas that everyone thinks that one size fits for all, but actually not. All right, actually not. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sri. It's very, very enlightening how you're driving this across Malaysia. We've gotten a number of questions from various members of the audience, and maybe I'll summarize a couple of themes and get back to our esteemed panel on their views on this. There have been themes of questions around, how do you manage end-to-end across the supply chain and the value chains that you're involved in. There are questions on what does this mean in terms of how you work differently with business partners and consumers. There have also been questions around the role of technology and digitalization and how you make this happen. And an interesting question on there are certainly changes in behavior that's needed. There are policies and incentives that are needed. Is there a need for specific infrastructure to enable these supply chains and value chains to work, to activate them with hard infrastructure that needs to be in place, and what state that is in Malaysia? And finally, there's been some questions around making it relatable to people, creating awareness, transparency, and so on. I think all these themes are quite spot on. I would love to just do a round with our panelists to get your views on this, and perhaps starting, Juan, with you, since you have both this experience managing across the supply chain globally and in Malaysia. What are some of the learnings? What's worked? Where have you found it challenging working across the supply chains and working differently with business partners and the consumers that you interact with? Juan?
Apologies, I was muted. Now, maybe on the consumer side, I think that the good news is that people understand and they want to make a change. We have organized in Petaling Jaya, in Subang Jaya, in Shah Alam, this collection system with the municipalities. We see that 80% of the people is participating. But our learning also is that you need to make it in a way easy for them to participate. People is willing to participate in this change, but sometimes they don't know, and I think it was alluded to this by Dr. Sri, that maybe people would like, but they are not sure on how to do. So clearly this element of very clear information is very important. No? For instance, one thing that we have been working is to have it very clear in the packaging, a very clear explanation on what you do with the different elements of the material. So that is an important element. In terms of the supply chain, clearly, we are, there is a bit of a work of pioneering. When we started moving from plastic straws to paper straws, the big challenge was finding the suppliers who had the technology and the scale to support this change. And obviously, let's not hide ourselves. All this comes with a cost. Whenever you start transitioning into these better packaging solutions, very often you find that there is not enough scale and that the solutions that are available are much costlier. But we look at this as the necessary investment to make change, because also we are very conscious that when someone like Nestle moves in a certain direction, given the size of the volume that we mobilize, you are also creating incentives and signaling to the packaging industry, in this case, that they need to go behind us to make it happen. I think that, that's a very important learning. Accept the initial cost as part of a necessary investment for a better future. Accept also and recognize, because here it's true that there is maybe a gap between the understanding of multinational companies that maybe are also exposed to this topic in more kind of advanced environments versus local companies where maybe they don't know really how to get started. So I think we need to look at this as an opportunity to share. I think that Pauline Go from Marea will have a session later on in these programs. And we share the knowledge. I think that it's very important to disseminate these learnings so that as many companies as possible can benefit. We are not competing. We compete on the shelf to make our products win against different brands. No, so clearly that is there that we compete. But when it comes to having a positive impact on the environment, we should not compete, but rather build alliances to accelerate change. I think that's a very important element. I mean, I could talk for hours, but maybe I just stop here and maybe I let other colleagues in the panel to kind of give their view.
No, thank you, Juan. That is certainly makes it very real and enlightening in terms of what does it take and what do you need to manage in the short term. Maybe to get to the point on infrastructure, which was raised by some of the panelists. Dr. Sri, you've looked at these value chains across the country. What's your view on critical infrastructure that's needed to enable waste management and circularity and recycling, and what is the current state, would you say, that exists in Malaysia?
Okay, I would say that when we are talking about infrastructure, there are a lot of infrastructure which is actually in this element here. But it is not just talking about the simple thing. I would say that recycling bins. All right, so we need the right size of the recycling bin at the right area or at the right venue, and followed by proper collection method. Not just a recycling bin to be there, but then it is not being collected, it will be overflowing and so on. That kind of infrastructure. The other infrastructure, it is also the infrastructure for recycling that supports the waste aggregation, the recycling, the advanced technology on recycling and so on. So that, as I mentioned, it is not just one part, but it will be able to support the entire. All right, so only then it will be able to have the right infrastructure to support all these areas. Currently, when it comes to the recycling technology, we only have mechanical recycling here in Malaysia, and of issues. All right, certain type of issues or certain type of recycling only available, and that is, of course, the technology is not unavailable here, and vice versa when we do the collection or the quantity.
Thanks, Dr. Sri, for your insights here. There was a question on technology and the role digitalization plays. in driving this agenda. I'd love to get Suzanne, your views, given you have a broad range of activities in development, in managing facilities and managing community efforts. What do you see as the role of technology and digitalization, and how has that played a part in what you're doing in your programs?
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Dave. I think digitalization is something that is really essential to all business. I mean, you think about property development, we are the ultimate really brick and mortar. And even we have found that it is really essential. And if anything, it's helped us survive the 2 years of MCO, because we started our digitalization journey maybe sometime in about 2017. And we went progressively to cover just about every aspect of the operations. Initially started with sales and marketing, but now we've gone to backroom and all that, where we have automated billing and other things that improve efficiency. I mean, the first and most important thing from an office perspective is digitalization cuts down on paper waste, which is a big thing. I mean, you don't have to print out all your bills, you don't have to do a lot. So from a waste perspective, it really helps. But digitalization also improves efficiency and productivity, right? And that's the part where, I think when people frame the sustainability conversation with businesses, you must always balance the two E's, the environment with the economic impact, right? And that's why for at EcoWorld, we adopt both. We say our E is both economy and environment, because it's important, that is the passion part, the environment, you want to do the right thing, but you also have a responsibility to your stakeholders to deliver the profits. So if you frame the conversation in a way that, hey, by being sustainable, you are more efficient, that means more profits. That automatically can get even the most hardened, capitalists to maybe sit up and think, Then along the way, if you put it in such a way that, hey, if you do something that is right, you are doing something that's right for your family, whatever. So these things matter. And with digitalization also, we find that we can spread the message more effectively. Say if we wanted to organize something, awareness is a very important part. For example, and we know habits are very ingrained. Sometimes people will just keep doing it and no one wants to pay attention. So this year when we decided we wanted to launch a World Environment Month, it wasn't a big song and dance. We just decided to organize a Zoom. We made everyone sign up, and we repeated again the same messages we would have repeated otherwise across the whole company group, right? And we were able to use also, the various Zoom platform, Teams platforms, and all that to share with our team. So it is very key, I think, and it actually improves the bottom line as well over time.
Thanks, Yuan. A very important balance for corporates and the private sector to maintain on advancing the environmental agenda, sustainability agenda, with reasonable economics that can deliver returns to your shareholders and your key stakeholders. With that theme of incentives and economics, Suzanne, would love your views, given you've seen this from multiple perspectives, the actions that are needed in the policy environment to be able to shape market behavior, consumer behavior, and corporate private sector behavior around the waste management agenda. Suzanne?
Sure, yeah, no, happy to. I mean, we've done some analysis previously actually in Malaysia about how much it cost the government per se for the food waste element of under SW Corp vis-a-vis how much it would cost if they gave, say, 10% of the value of the product per weight. And the government would make a massive saving, actually. And we've discussed this with previous administrations who are all very interested in sort of forging ahead with this. And I explained, because I've been working a lot on this, even with the Global Food Banking Network. And Deloitte have done an amazing report about all the countries who are currently giving incentives, because it is all about carrot and stick, and make no bones about that. And if we really do want to reduce our waste, this is something we have to do. It's not really a choice, I think, particularly with the smaller, medium companies. I mean, the bigger companies, it's kind of, obviously, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's easier. for this to be factored into their mechanics. But if we really do want to make a difference, we have to have carrot and sticks. We have to have incentives. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. It's simple. It will happen a little bit, but it won't happen properly. So this is something that I think the government really do need to engage with. But obviously, you know, there's been COVID, there's been lots of things, you know, and a lot of political change here in Malaysia in the last couple of years. But I feel very optimistic that if we kind of sit down yet again with the policymakers, I think, you know, they are receptive. But it's just been unfortunate with all the recent events that have happened. But yeah, I do think we do need to have incentives, and financial incentives will be the driver for this.
Thanks a lot, Suzanne. I think we're getting almost to time, and I would love to wrap up our session with a view from Geoff. Geoff, we've heard a lot about what you know, various stakeholders need to do. Would love your view, as you're in the front line of working with consumers. What is it that consumers can do to really move the needle on this, and what do you see as the priority for consumers, particularly in Malaysia, on this topic?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. And I can link that to what Suzanne was talking about, and other speakers were talking about carrots and sticks, because I do think that's important. Consumers are a fairly inert bunch. You know, they are receptive to external messages and you know, are watching world affairs to a degree. We're fortunate that our customer base is actually quite tuned into world affairs and environmental matters. So we felt it, our consumers or our customers, we were able to connect with them and mobilize and make some changes. But we're asking customers to make some fundamental cultural changes, or you know, patterns of habit change. And habit changes are not easy things to change and do need careful work. One practical instance we had was carrier bag. The government gives a tax on carrier bags of 20 cents. We actually, for 18 months, gave a 20 cents reward to any customer that was positively bringing their own bag in. So you could either pay the government 20 cents or receive 20 cents by making the difference. And we felt that was one of the key enablers to mobilize and make a change. You know, it was a financial incentive. We backed it up by communication. I think education and communication is essential to raise the priorities, raise the ability to make these changes. If you back that up with a bit of incentivization and a bit of reward, then I think that's a powerful way to get the first swathe of customers to adopt new behaviors. Once you've got a group of customers making those positive behaviors, you can celebrate them and also point out the difference to the others. And that's what we did over a period of time. We worked on the people that were slower to move and nudged them across the line. And eventually you penalize them and say, well, time's up, you don't have that choice. You've got to make the move or not. Or you walk with your feet. And that was always our risk. So I think, you know, I'm a firm believer of education, rewards and incentivization before you apply the penalties later. And I think it does need a bit of government regulation to come in quickly, though, to enforce that and make it the norm. And, you know, looking across the world, the countries making the biggest difference are the ones where industry, consumers and governments are sort of rowing in the same direction at a similar pace. And we can't expect consumers to make these changes themselves. We can't expect industry to go out on a limb. And as other speakers have said, it costs more to do the right thing. And when you're driven by economic returns to investors, that's a hard direction to take. So I think it does require all these stakeholder groups to pull in the same direction at the same time.
Thanks a lot, Geoff. I think we're just about at time, and I'd love to thank all our panelists for a highly engaging and very rich discussion on waste management. And certainly I have learned a lot and inspired by the many things that you and your respective organizations are driving. And with that, I'd love to hand over back to Dr. Kala. Dr. Kala, thanks again for organizing this great discussion. Much to think about and many more things to act on.
Thank you so much, Dave. And I think there were lots and lots of questions that we never got to answer, but don't worry. we will have a blog post and we'll make sure that all your questions are answered within the next few days. Yeah. So ladies and gentlemen, it's already 2 p.m. So I think you will agree with me. And just as Dave has said that we had a very informative and enlightening session, a wonderful afternoon, I think well spent. And I have learned so much just from organizing this webinar. And I'm confident that all of you have also benefited. So finally, please allow me to thank all the speakers for their time, and also to Mr. Dave Sivaprasad for moderating the session so effectively. And we would not have had the desired impact if we didn't have the right audience. Thank you for staying, till right at the end, and your active participation, your questions, and we hope to see all of you again on the 12th of July for our session 2. We'll be talking about technological solutions, and also smart cities. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, goodbye, stay safe and stay healthy. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.